Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Very pleased to say, joining us tonight, football journalist and broadcaster Henry Winter and the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. Hello to you both. Welcome along. Let's quickly run through the back pages to set the scene then. This is the headline in The Sun. It is a sandstorm. City v Prem war heats up over UAE spending. KDB open to mega money Saudi move. And hell's bells, he's jaded. That's Jude Bellingham. Mail back page, City go to war. They cry discrimination and sue Premier League over spending rules. United staff to be banned from the canteen. That's a non-playing staff. The Bruyne open to Saudi mega contract. A typical England's opener in Barbados rained off. Sports supplement, The Guardian has this, the front page. Stanway's corker sets up vintage Lionesses win. Big win in France, of course. Toney sweats on Euro spot for the men as Southgate issues warning. And City spark civil war, The Guardian report. Champions launch legal action over Premier League's rules. And the back page, on point. Stanway sparks welcome win for Lionesses, while City's legal case over Premier League rules to start on Monday. And then this in the back page of The Star, bish bash dosh, KDB tempted by Saudi riches, which we'll get to momentarily. But let's start with the Mail. City go to war. Mike Keegan reporting, of course, a story first reported by Matt Lawton in The Times, but the headline, the subheading here, they cry discrimination and sue Premier League over spending rules. Explosive hearing to start on Monday with 12 clubs opposing the champions. Henry, we can be a want for hyperbole sometimes in these situations, but just how big, how significant is this development?
This is seismic. This is relating to the future of the Premier League, which has been put at risk by Manchester City's behaviour on this. First great story by Matt Lawton, absolutely brilliant story. Just going through it, some of the phrases that City and their lawyers have been throwing around, the tyranny of the majority, they call it. Which is an old John Stuart Mill phrase, which actually means the oppressing of smaller groups. Now, I don't think anyone would look on Manchester City as the oppressed. They've got probably the best manager in the world in Pep Guardiola alongside Ancelotti. They've got the best player in the Premier League in Phil Foden, recently voted as. They've won the title 4 times in the last 4 years. They've got £100 million subs on the bench. They've got a fantastic stadium, amazing training ground. They don't look pretty oppressed to me. So I just find this very strange. We know that the winners are going to be the lawyers in all this. And maybe this is just simply a counter-strike because they're wanting to either distract or place pressure on the Premier League as they head towards the big date later this year on the 115 charges. City deny all allegations against them, but this just reeks. Who runs the game in this country? Should it be the people at the Premier League? Should it be the democracy in the Premier League, the 14, the majority of 14 who then vote these things through? Or should English football be run from Saudi and Abu Dhabi?
Well, that's a lot of questions there, John. I suppose that the key issues that people are drawing attention to from the 165-page document, as Mike Keegan writes here, Premier League's associated party transaction rules, which is the ability of companies related to the club's ownership to fund that they're not market value. City argue they shouldn't be pegged to a market value. But as Henry says there, is the more existential threat regarding the democratic process, the 14-club vote, which seems to have been integral to the 30 years plus of the Premier League?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I just want to echo what Henry said there as well. I mean, Matt Lawton, what a fantastic scoop, a really agenda-setting story, which actually also sets up the agenda for the Premier League AGM, which starts on Thursday. I imagine there's going to be a few uncomfortable looks and uncomfortable people within that room when all the 20 clubs get together and discuss it. Look, that has been the case, hasn't it, since about February, when we first sort of learned that City were considering this action against associated party transactions. And it's it's sort of kind of been bubbling under the surface, really. Clubs, I think, have been aware that it's obviously coming. The detail within that 165-page legal document, which Matt really gets into in scientific and forensic detail, is fascinating, frankly. There's no doubt about it, you know, as Matt is writing there and other people sort of kind of reporting as well, perhaps this is almost seen as a distraction from the 115 charges, and maybe that's employed to kind of, you know, sort of take away the Premier League focus from those charges, which are obviously in the in tray, if you like, and pending. And frankly, if they win this case, there's no doubt about it. Where does that leave those 115 charges? It significantly weakens the case potentially against them. You know, as Henry rightly points out, of course, City deny wrongdoing, but, you know, there is this line within Matt's piece, which I'm just reading off the Times app, actually saying, if City are successful in their claim, and some rival clubs fear they will be, it could enable the richest clubs to value their sponsorship deals without independent assessment. That's at the heart of the matter, frankly. It's about how you come to these valuations. You know, Newcastle, obviously, when they had Saudi ownership, the rules were tightened up in 2021. And look, what it means now for the Premier League, and indeed the kind of the integrity of the league and the competitive nature of the league. Well, honestly, if this case goes through, I'm sorry, but it brings down absolutely everything. The league would be in tatters, and frankly, it would be left, with almost a bit of a shell without much soul, I have to say. I think it's a really, really worrying development. I can't believe that too many right-minded City fans would be on board with this. I mean, listen, I love Manchester City and the way that they play, the way that they set up their teams. Pep Guardiola, the best manager, you know, of all time almost, and it's wonderful to see. But the off-the-field stuff, this stuff is just, honestly, it leaves you shaking your head in absolute despair. It's a really, really worrying development, I must say.
Interesting to see what City fans' thoughts are tonight. Let's go to the back page of The Sun now for their take on it. Sandstorm beneath the Bruyne story. City v Prem war heats up over UAE spending. Henry, what would be, as John alludes there, the financial ramifications of this regarding state ownership and unlimited spending, presumably?
Well, I mean, they're not doing too badly, and they would just sort of accelerate away with more trophies. But you know, as John points out, there's sort of the detail in some of this, and you know, cities say, well, we won't be able to spend any more money on community. I mean, you know, that's quite a cheap shot. That, you know, you think of all the people, the coaches and the staff who work so hard in City's excellent community department, doing such important work in the city and beyond. And you've got the sort of the owners effectively saying, well, you know, they're almost sort of throwing their toys out the pram and say, well, we're not going to invest in the community anymore. You know, if it wasn't so serious, it would just be, you know, it would just be petty. So I just hope that the right-minded clubs actually get together and, you know, stare down City and the Premier League stand up to this, because the future of the Premier League's at stake here, and that's not hyperbole to say that. This is just potentially so damaging. And what is sad is that we should be celebrating Manchester City's season and the fantastic football they played, and celebrating the joys of Phil Foden and Doku and all these players they've got, and the brilliance of Pep Guardiola, not simply in winning games, but that his philosophy, how he's changed football at all levels with all his tactical innovations. And yet now Manchester City are being just associated with greed.
On that point, just pick up that with you, Henry. Come back to you with Sam Wallace's piece in the Telegraph. City's case plunges national game into battle for survival. I think you just referenced it there in slightly different phrasing. But is it an existential threat, do you feel? Are we talking potential precedents for breakaway leagues that we've seen quashed a few years ago?
Well, I think it might be 18-2, the breakaway. I think that there would be, you know, particularly if Newcastle decide, I mean, Newcastle probably too sensible, and they've got a good chief executive in Darren Eales, that they wouldn't go down that path. But I think that Sam's completely right. I mean, it is a fight for survival. It's more than existential. I mean, this is very real, very, very grim. It's a dark day for the Premier League. The lawyers will be probably on both sides, will be absolutely loving this. But the season, the sport should be defined by what happens on the pitch, on the season. And you can go back to when the Football League, let alone the Premier League, was founded, and William McGregor, effectively the first sort of chief executive of Aston Villa back in the Victorian era, he actually wrote into the first constitution that a Football League ever had was that the football clubs, the constituent parties, should not sue each other, should not take legal action. And that was back in the Victorian era. And now what have we got? We just haven't learned. And it's really disappointing that Manchester City doing this, because they're actually shredding the future of a competition that they've celebrated their success in over the last few years. It's just mindless.
A competition, a league, John, that's been celebrated globally as well as a shining light in world sport. Back page of the Star, though, it's civil war. City fight to get Prem rulebook ripped up. How fractured potentially could the game be? Could these clubs be when they come to these meetings and trying to have a unified league?
Absolutely. It splits it completely. And you have the best team in the league, Manchester City, who win the title 4 times in a row. They are unquestionably, I think, the best team in the world, frankly. They are the champions. They are the reigning champions. And at the heart of it, they're embarrassing the Premier League, frankly, by taking legal action against them. I mean, it's incredibly difficult, I think, now for the Premier League. These are dark days. Listen, we expected Manchester City to defend themselves against their 115 charges. They have said we are going to prove our innocence, and it's important that we, to say that they're battling from a legal point of view to clear their name and reputation. We expected that, but did we expect this level? I do think it's gone over and above what most clubs were expecting as some sort of hit back, really. I see it as a preemptive strike, really. They are doing everything that they can, frankly, to get their message in first. And that's the point. We do also read within these stories, the Times reporting that sort of between 10 and 12 clubs have offered to stand up and sort of kind of testify in favour of the Premier League at this hearing, which arbitration hearing, which does start next Monday. So I think that begins to tell you that the sort of kind of, the depth of feeling, because it's very rare, really, that those kind of clubs would, back against some sort of legal case here against one of their own, if you like. But that is the depth of feeling. I'm sure it runs deep, and they're absolutely determined and defiant to kind of, fight for their futures. It's so important at the moment. This comes at a time when we're discussing a new system for PSR, and don't confuse that with what kind of we're seeing proposed to enable clubs like an Aston Villa, for example, to kind of compete, having got into the Champions League. There has to be a happy medium, and I tell you what, finding this and doing this sort of legal action is no good for anyone. It really does leave, I think, the reputation and kind of the league really in disarray right now, and these clubs will be, I think, embarrassed by what's going on.
And a final thought, Henry, on the subject of feelings, and there's a clear distinction which you made at the top, that Manchester City deny all wrongdoing, whereas Everton and Nottingham Forest would have conceded some trespasses around PSR. But do you feel those fans will be just deflated tonight, thinking that there is a different scenario if you've got lots of resources behind you?
The fans of Forest and Everton, yeah, absolutely. They will see a complete inconsistency of this. I mean, all these legal issues and point deductions and everything have to be decided within the season that they're related to. It's absolutely crazy that the 115 charges, which John says and I've said and everyone says, City have denied, that that's run on and run on and run on. It's the best sports league in the world. It's the best competition in the world, the Premier League. And Manchester City have to understand that collectivity is at the heart of the league's success, and they're just not doing that, and they're causing this civil war, and it's damaging the league, and it's going to damage them.
Indeed. Well, the hearing starts Monday. We'll keep across to John.
Well, I was just going to add, really, Teddy, that we need the league at the heart of this. As Henry rightly says, we need competitiveness. That is why we have kind of PSR in the first place. That's why it's been in place, for 10, 12 years. That's why we have, associated party transactions. We need a competitive nature. We cannot afford for one team, for one club, for two or three to completely run away with it. We always say about the Premier League is the best in the world. One team can beat another on any given day. That's what we're fighting to maintain here. That's at the heart of this. And that's, I think, the message that has to be, portrayed within that room at the Premier League AGM on Thursday. It's vital that we keep the Premier League competitive, entertaining and watchable. And I have to say, if some of these cases sort of succeed, it will open the floodgates for more, and we will lose the beauty of the Premier League.
OK, gents, powerful stuff. Thank you very much for now, John and Henry. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in the Mirror. Last throw of the dice, Toney must wow Wembley or else, as Southgate gives a striker a final audition for a spot in Euro squad. A piece by John Cross, which we'll reflect on with him next. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to football journalist and broadcaster Henry Winter and the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. And John, let's come to you. Crossy, last throw of the dice land. Toney must wow Wembley or else, as Southgate gives striker a final audition for a spot in Euro squad. In the back page of the Mirror, there it is. John, tell us about this situation regarding Ivan Toney. He's not going to get much of a chance, is he?
Well, it's so interesting, isn't it, really? Because, listen, Henry and I were both at St James's Park last night. You kind of try and pick away at the ramifications about who started, who didn't get on, who was on the bench, who got changed, and that sort of thing. You've got three strikers, basically, three number nines, haven't you? Harry Kane, captain, absolutely nailed on. And Gareth Southgate, when we spoke to him, after his press conference last night, he made it pretty clear that Harry Kane will start and captain the team. And also that on Monday night, having missed, say, the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, he needed minutes in his legs. And that was his priority, Gareth Southgate, to bring him on to replace Ollie Watkins. Now, Ollie Watkins, given the starting berth against Bosnia and Herzegovina, what does that tell us? That tells us that really at the moment, Ivan Toney is on the outside of the three, if you like. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? I think that basically in a squad, even with 26, that he could take three number nines. I'm sure he'd take a variety of forwards, but really, will he take three nines? I doubt it. So maybe Toney's on the outside. But Gareth Southgate did say and did insist that Toney will get minutes on Friday night. And this just plays into the whole, trimming down the 33 into 26. You've got 7 to lose. They've got to finalise their squad and hand the squad in, if you like, to UEFA by 11 o'clock Friday night. I personally think he would have made up his mind surely before the game. What is the point in playing a game on Friday night and then using players, if you like, who are not going to be in that 26? I think that defeats the object, really. So it will be really interesting to see whether we kind of get any sort of hints and whispers before the game. But I think Toney really saw this as a big opportunity for redemption, if you like. 8-month ban. He came back really with a bang and good form. But I tell you what, the last 3 months, it hasn't gone so well for Toney at all. And I don't think he's been scoring. He hasn't been playing quite so well. I would have had him absolutely in my squad a few months ago, but now I do think he's up against it. So that story really just sort of says, look, this is last chance saloon for Toney. OK, well, Jason Burt writing, Henry, in the Telegraph, Kane's start is blow for Toney's hope. Southgate arguing he needs to give his captain minutes, Henry. What do you think of the situation? Do you feel that Toney came into the squad perhaps with an outside chance? And also, where does this leave England if Kane does get injured in the Euros, if he doesn't go?
Well, the most important issue this week regarding England strikers was that Harry Kane showed no discomfort from his supposed back problem that afflicted him during the last few weeks of Bayern Munich season, and he was fine in training. He was fine in the game. He'll start, as Southgate's been saying, on Friday night. The one thing that Toney's got going to him, and I completely agree with Crossy that Watkins is now ahead of him. It's clearly Kane out, the number 9, absolutely, no doubt about that. And then Watkins. One thing that Toney's got going for him, he's got a fantastic penalty record. And I always look at the sort of the strikers, particularly when you've got an indomitable character like Harry Kane, particularly as captain as well, who's going to start every game. That can they come off the bench in a knockout game, even if it's just for one touch, to put away that penalty, to take England from a quarter-final into the semi-final, potentially into a final, which is what they should be aiming at. But I agree with Crossy. I think it's touch and go for Toney now. And that, by the way, Crossy, fair play to your subs. That's a brilliant headline. Last throw of the Diceland. I like that. I'm sure it's one of yours, Crossy. But it's straight out of the Crossy Christmas cracker. But I mean, it is a good one, and it does completely reflect it. But then what happens if Ivan Toney comes on and he's brilliant for the last 15 minutes against Iceland? The great thing is that England have got good options there. But Southgate said it when he announced the squad. He said, strikers are a rare breed. They're a little bit more high maintenance. And can you take so many of them? They're like prowling lions. And we've got appropriately 3 lions here. And one of them is going to be sort of prowling around in the background, sort of disappointed that he's not playing. What's that going to do? But they're all good characters. But I agree with Crossy. It's Kane followed by Watkins.
OK, well, let's talk Lionesses now. Prowling Lionesses, John in the eye. On point, Stanway Sparks welcome win for Lionesses. Remember the men's heartache on penalties in Saint Etienne in 1998. But how big a win in France for England women was this?
Absolutely huge. It turns it around, doesn't it, really? A week on and sort of kind of, roles reversed. But I don't know whether people have seen Georgia Stanway's opener in the 2-1 win. And what a strike. Absolutely fantastic. Sort of the Lioness is building up down the left-hand side. The ball comes back for Stanway on the edge of the box. And what a fabulous strike, honestly. Brilliant technique, great power, brilliant goal, and sort of kind of really gets England absolutely off to a flyer. 2-0 ahead. They're pegged back towards the end. But I tell you what, this is a major, major boost because it just effectively kind of puts things back in their hands, hopefully, and kind of puts a bit more of a sort of a really sort of optimistic look and vibe about qualification, hopefully, for 2025.
Huge win for Trinity Wiegman's side. Henry, I've only got about 25 seconds. Final thought on transfer line. KDB's open to a mega money Saudi move in a lot of the papers. What's your take on that? He was very candid, wasn't he, about the money?
Very candid, very interesting interview. Manchester City seems to be all about money at the moment.
They certainly do as well. Thank you very much. Crossy, do you expect him to go finally? You got 10 seconds?
Oh, I tell you what, don't break my heart, Kevin. Don't do it. Don't go to Saudi. He's one of the all-time greats. But I fear when he's talking about a year left, I think he might do,
OK, we'll watch that space. John, Henry, thank you very much for being a part of the show tonight. We'll see you soon. If you missed any of it, a chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour. Also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Wednesday evening. The guests will be David Ornstein from The Athletic and Charlie Wyatt from The Sun.